They say weddings are supposed to be the happiest day of your life, a day filled with promises, laughter, and the belief that the best years are still ahead. For Sarah Bennett, that day should have been the start of a new chapter. Instead, it became the final hours of her life. What makes her story unforgettable and deeply unsettling is that she saw it coming. She told people in plain words who would be responsible for her death, and no one believed her. This is the haunting case of the bride who identified her killer before she died. Sarah wasn't the kind of person you'd expect to end up at the center of a murder investigation. She was 27, a beloved elementary school teacher in a small town where everyone knew everyone else. She had a smile that seemed to reach out and grab you, and a kindness that made strangers feel like old friends. She loved coffee with too much sugar, decorating her classroom for every holiday, and teaching her students about the stars. She had been with Daniel Cross for 5 years. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple. Attractive, ambitious, and deeply in love. He was charming, confident, the kind of man who could walk into a room and make everyone feel like they knew him. Sarah's friends noticed how proud she looked when he put his arm around her, but some also noticed the way her body would stiffen just slightly in those moments. Behind closed doors, things were different. Daniel's protectiveness sometimes crossed into control. He wanted to know where she was at all times. He disliked her spending too much time with certain friends. He once showed up unannounced during a girls' night out, just to check in. Sarah never made a dramatic scene about it, but those closest to her could sense the tension. Then came the moment that, in hindsight, feels like a red flag waving in the middle of an empty road. A few weeks before the wedding, Sarah sat in a quiet cafe with her best friend, Emily. The steam from her tea had faded, but she kept her hands wrapped around the cup like she was trying to keep warm. "If anything ever happens to me," she said, her voice steady but low, "you'll know it was him." Emily stared at her. Him could only mean Daniel. But the cafe was quiet and the sun outside was shining. It felt impossible, like Sarah was speaking in some sort of metaphor. Emily tried to joke. "You mean if he forgets to pick up milk, right?" Sarah didn't laugh. She didn't even look up. She just said, "Promise me you'll remember." Those words should have set off alarms, but it's human nature to cling to normalcy, to tell ourselves the people we know couldn't possibly be capable of something like that. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Sarah became quieter. She still smiled, still laughed at her students' jokes, but Emily noticed she was more tired. She once confided she was having trouble sleeping, that she would wake up in the middle of the night with her heart pounding, convinced someone was standing over her. The morning of August 14th, Sarah's wedding day, was perfect. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the little church. White roses lined the pews. The air was warm, but not heavy. Guests whispered about how stunning Sarah looked in her lace gown. But Emily noticed something. Sarah's hands were shaking. Not the fluttery nerves of a bride about to walk down the aisle, but something deeper, sharper, and she kept glancing over her shoulder toward the church doors as if she was expecting someone to burst in. The ceremony was flawless. The vows were said, the rings exchanged. Cameras clicked. People clapped. Daniel kissed her, and everyone cheered. But Emily swears she saw a flicker of something cross Sarah's face in that moment. Something almost like fear. The reception was loud, joyful, filled with the clinking of champagne glasses and the shuffle of dancing feet. But amid the celebration, Sarah pulled Emily aside. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "If anything happens to me today," she said, "it's Daniel. Don't let him talk his way out of it." Emily froze. The music blared, people laughed, and it felt absurd to hear something so dark in such a bright, happy place. She said the thing she's regretted every day since. "Sarah, stop. You're just nervous. Everything's fine." Sarah gave a small smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes, and walked back into the crowd. That was the last conversation they ever had. Later that night, after the reception ended, guests assumed Sarah and Daniel had gone to their suite. But 2 hours later, a hotel gardener found Sarah's body lying among the rose bushes in the private garden. Her wedding ring was on the ground, as if it had been placed there. She had been strangled. Police questioned Daniel immediately. He claimed he had been making calls to arrange a surprise honeymoon. But there were no calls, no bookings, no surprise trip. A hotel staff member came forward, saying they'd seen Daniel walking away from the garden minutes before Sarah was found. His tuxedo jacket was missing. His hands were scratched. When confronted, Daniel's story shifted. Now, he said they'd argued, she fell, and he panicked. But the autopsy left no doubt. Sarah's death wasn't an accident. Emily told police about Sarah's warnings, both at the cafe and on her wedding day. Those words became the most damning evidence at the trial. "If anything happens to me, it's Daniel." Then came a strange twist. The day before her wedding, Sarah had withdrawn $5,000 in cash from her bank account. The money was never found. Was she planning to leave him? Was she paying someone to help her disappear? Or was she settling a debt? That mystery remains unsolved. The trial was brutal. The prosecution painted Daniel as controlling and jealous. Witnesses testified about his temper, about the way he'd once slammed a door so hard a picture frame shattered. The defense tried to paint Sarah as unstable, claiming she had emotional episodes and could have caused her own injuries in a fall. The jury didn't buy it. They took less than a day. Daniel was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. Emily sat in court just feet away from him. She says she wanted to scream, to demand why, but when she looked at his face, it was blank. Today, Sarah's case is shared by domestic violence advocates as a chilling reminder. When someone says they feel unsafe, believe them, even if everything around you looks perfect. Emily still dreams about that day. In her dreams, she answers Sarah differently. She asks more questions. She does something. She changes the ending. But she always wakes up to the same reality. The image that lingers isn't just Sarah in her wedding dress. It's the knowledge that in her final hours, she was surrounded by people who loved her, but couldn't save her. It's like watching a candle burn in a silent room, knowing the wind is coming, but being unable to close the window. And somewhere between the vows and the first dance, Sarah must have realized that the man she married wasn't her forever. He was her ending. Watch the next video for another true story that will make you question how well you really know the people closest to you. From this moment, the story takes an even darker turn, one that demands a deeper dive into the psychology of fear, intuition, and human behavior in moments of extreme stress. Experts in criminal psychology often talk about the pre-incident indicators, subtle signs that danger is approaching, sometimes hours, days, or even months before a violent act occurs. In this bride's case, those signs weren't just subtle. They were practically screaming in the background. A look, a gesture, a few carefully chosen words from her future killer. All of it became crystal clear only in hindsight. The tragedy? Hindsight doesn't save lives. We must also consider the cultural and social context. Weddings are often seen as the ultimate expression of love and unity, a public declaration in front of friends and family. That's why the juxtaposition of a wedding and a murder is so psychologically jarring. It's the violent destruction of a symbol of hope. Criminal profilers note that killers who target people during highly emotional or symbolic life events often do so to amplify fear, dominance, and control. But here's where it gets chilling. In the weeks before her death, she had shared fragments of her concerns with friends, sometimes masking them as jokes, sometimes letting her guard down in quiet, private conversations. They thought it was stress, or cold feet, or the natural nerves that come before a big day. Nobody, not even those closest to her, realized they were hearing a woman speak about her own impending death. If we step into her shoes in those final hours, the details become painfully human. The scent of her bouquet, the faint vibration of music through the floor, the warmth of her wedding dress under the summer sun, and somewhere in the crowd, the shadow of a person she had come to fear. Imagine smiling for photos, dancing with friends, all while your mind races with thoughts you can't speak out loud. That is the reality she lived in her final hours. After the murder, investigators pieced together a timeline so haunting it reads like the script of a psychological thriller. They uncovered text messages, call logs, and CCTV footage, each piece of evidence a thread in a web that confirmed what she had been trying to warn people about. This wasn't a crime of passion, it was calculated, planned, methodical. Her ability to identify her killer before her death changes the way we think about victims in true crime. It raises questions about how many people try to warn the world before something happens, only to be ignored or misunderstood. It forces us to confront a deeply uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the victim sees it coming, and nobody stops it. In the end, her story is more than just a tragic headline. It's a cautionary tale about listening, truly listening. When someone hints at fear, danger, or the possibility of violence, it's about trusting intuition, even when it disrupts a happy narrative. And it's about understanding that evil can hide in plain sight, even on the happiest day of someone's life. Her legacy isn't just in the photographs, the vows, or the flowers that withered away after the funeral. It's in the lesson she left behind, that sometimes the most important warnings come from the voices we lose too soon.